I think we'll just get started. And my name is Julia Chang-Frank. I'm one of the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commissioners, and we thought maybe just go down the line and introduce ourselves.
Todd Abbott, another commissioner.
And Brian Martin, another commissioner. The three of us are on the Dog Park Subcommittee.
And I'm Shelley Putzer. I'm the Recreation and Community Services Director.
So welcome. So the goal of today's workshop is really to hear from the public about what their needs, desires, and concerns are for dog facilities in Albany. And although we've had public meetings about various dog issues in the past, this is, and Shelley, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is sort of one of the first of its kind where we're just kind of having an open forum to discuss many different options. Our work plan specifically from City Council is to identify options for establishment of a dog park in Albany, examine the alternatives, and make recommendations regarding location options and a pro-con analysis for each location. Just so you all know, the Albany Municipal Code, AMC 10-4.2a, actually allows dogs to be off-leash on public property in Albany if under proper voice control. This is actually different from both Berkeley and El Cerrito, and I think because we're in the middle, people assume that we have the same law, but we do not, and so, ooh, nice. So, yeah, just wanted to let everybody know that. And so we did want to also present some findings. Well, actually, why don't I just go ahead to the agenda, which is we're going to have about half an hour presentation where we're going to share some survey results and also give some information about the background on what we've done to date. We'll have a dog park idea generation, so we'll break up into and actually have a time for you all to make comments on these at these various discussion sections. And then there'll be also a period after that to kind of signal your support or support for various statements. And then we'll come back and do a question and answer. We're hoping that we're asking that you not ask questions at this time because you'll have opportunities to. We have this question pad or butcher paper right there that you can just go ahead and put your questions on, and we'll have a time at the end to address some of those questions. If we can't address one of those questions during this time, we'll answer later in a written form for you all. Okay, so what we've done to date. Back in the fall of 2018, actually Brian, Todd, and I did an extensive outreach to targeted survey to the Memorial Park Section B neighbors and also the users. Just recently, in the last month, we published a general dog park online survey, which you may have heard about. Maybe that's how you heard about this workshop. And so Todd will be presenting the results of that survey. Today is obviously the dog park community workshop. And going forward, we're going to bring back the results from our subcommittee's work to the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Commission in June and potentially have recommendations to present to City Council in July. What we just wanted to also clarify is that our commission doesn't make any final decision. We only make recommendations to City Council, and they can choose whether or not to go further and look into whatever we recommend. So just want to let you know it. And those points in June at our commission meeting, you have another opportunity to make public comment. Also at the City Council meeting in July, you'd have another opportunity to make public comment about this item. Okay, so just wanted to also clarify, and Shelley's going to jump in a second, but this question of why do we even need this workshop? Don't we already have a dog park in Albany? And we found from the general survey that many people thought that's here, I'll do a little more, that this location, which you may recognize in Memorial Park, that, what is it, the northeast corner, is a dog park. It is not. It's actually a multi-use area. That's why it's called Section B. And Shelley, do you mind giving a little history on that?
Sure. Section B was established, it was basically almost exactly about 8 years ago, and it was came about when the field used to be an open field for athletics, and we installed a fence down the right field line to keep dogs separated from kids that were playing sports. We had some incidents of dogs running in for games, and a couple of kids, I think, suffered a few injuries from dogs. So the fence was installed, and that created Section A, which is the ball field, and then Section B, which at the time when it was created was supposed to remain a multi-use area. And that was the terminology used for it. So it wasn't set up initially as a dog park. What happened was, since it had some fencing, it didn't have the lockable gate, that automatic lock and gate, like it does at the time. It just had a regular gate. There were things that had happened in that year, that was 2012, where there was a number of commission meetings about the Section B area and how it was kind of turning into an area where there were a lot of dogs rather than a multi-use area. And so you've seen the space evolve. And there were a number of community meetings, ad hoc dog committee meetings, and a number of commission meetings that year to talk about good neighbor signs in terms of kind of the rules of the area and issues with no amenities, and people didn't want amenities, and some of the noise and parking issues. Then it evolved into a locking gate so that people would respect the hours that were posted. Those good neighbors, that good neighbor sign was approved by council, so that went through the full process. And council also made the final decision on the hours of operation. And then we treat it as a multi-use sports field in our thinking, and so that's why it's shut down during the same time that we shut down all of our sports fields in the wintertime to allow that grass to be reseeded. So I think that I obviously can answer any questions about that if they come up too. But
Okay, great, thank you.
yeah.
So as I mentioned, we did an extensive outreach. So one of the first things we did was we reached out to the neighbors. And so we went door to door, Brian, Todd, and I, to knock on doors, 43 households that sort of bordered the Section B area over several weekends. And we reached 60% of those households, about 26 of those 43 households. We also did a user survey of a different form over multiple choice that we handed out to users at Section B. And we tried to hit during the very peak hours, during the weekdays, weekends, to hit the sort of afternoon and evening users, and 107 surveys were completed. We have results of those, the detailed results of those surveys up here. We already presented them at a different meeting, so we're not going to go in detail about them again, but you can feel free to look at them more closely. We just wanted to give a snapshot of a couple different sort of outcomes of that survey. One was that when we asked, what do you think about Section B as an off-leash dog area, the majority were positive.
This is for neighbors.
Sorry, this is the neighbors. Yes, the neighbors around Section B. 19% were negative, 19% were no comment or neutral. But just to point out, of those concerns, the main concerns were noise, not just from dogs barking, but also from people talking and arguing. And so that's just something to be aware of, and also parking issues. What Todd and I did is we actually talked with the police chief of Albany to find out what concerns he's heard about. And what he said was actually the concerns or the reports of concerns from that area really lessened once the timed gate was installed. So before that, there were like hour violations and, just a lot of rule violations. So that seems to be mostly resolved now with that timed gate, which I think is a very positive thing. The other just short outcome of the user survey result was that for the most part, people who used Section B lived very close to Section B, like within a few blocks or within a mile, which could be somewhere else in Albany or even in the neighboring El Cerrito or Berkeley. And for the question, I choose Section B over other local dog parks because These were some of the main reasons: location convenience, community connectedness, and well-behaved dogs and friendly owners. I do think there's an awareness from the dog owners there that they need to be aware of the neighbors, and I think maybe some of that's from self-regulation, but just a reminder to everybody here, whoever may be a dog user, just to please really respect the neighbors and try to stop the barking dogs, that even if they're not yours, maybe somebody else's, just to help keep that culture there. So self-enforcement seemed to be key. And I'm now going to hand it over to Todd.
All right, thank you, Julia. So that was our work with Section B. So now it was time to turn to the general, wait a minute. Skipped. There we go. The general question, more directly aligned with what our task was, is there a need or a desire for an additional dog facilities in Albany? If there is, I mean, if there isn't, we're done. We can just walk away. We're done with the process. But that was the first question. Second, what features would be most important to the users of such a dog facility? And then ultimately, what might be a good location? So those are the questions that we created, I guess, a third survey. This was, it's been out for about a month. This was open to everybody, but we did really want to hear from dog users because we are asking the potential users what they would like to see in a dog facility. It was publicized via the city e-news and the city next door account, and signs were placed at Memorial Park, Terrace Park, and the Bulb. We received 206 responses, pretty good response, I thought, before the deadline of May 27th. Of those, 235 of the folks own or walk a dog, and 25 do not own or walk a dog. So we're going to look at our questions now. Is there a need or desire for additional dog facilities? No, that's the easy one. We just asked that question. And it seemed like a pretty resounding yes. There's 53% of the respondents said yes, there are not enough dog facilities in Albany. I would like to see more. So that was a pretty straightforward answer. And I don't think we need to say more about that. So we're moving on. So after that, we're asking what they'd like to see. So this question was, of the dog facilities you use, why do you use the ones you use? We posed 4 options. One is location. Location is the key reason I use the area. And this was a very strong result. People really want a location that's convenient, which probably means, for most of them, means walking. I have some statistics. The survey results will be available here too, but I can turn to that if you want. But they want to also be safe. We heard a number of comments that they want a place that they feel safe. So that's a pretty strong result there, that location is going to be very important. Ground surface. Ground surface is an interesting question. How important is the ground surface? Section B is grass. A lot of dog parks are bark, so we're kind of wondering if they have a preference of grass over bark. One of the key issues here, of course, being if it's grass, it's really hard to be open year-round because the grass won't survive. Half the year it's going to be mud, and the next year it's going to be that much worse, and it's just going to get worse and worse. So how important is the ground surface? And you can see it's a pretty strong response, but not nearly as strong as location. So there might be some flexibility. And in fact, later in the survey, we asked the question, if you had to choose between a grass surface and open year-round, and it was like 50%, it was in fact 50% would prefer it open year-round, to 34% really wanted it to be the grass surface. So if we've got to make that trade-off, which on some of these options we might, that's something to keep in mind. That, and I think it's important to be open year-round. So that's valuable information. Another options, the size of the area. How, is the size important? This could mean both large or small, of course. And it's clearly a very strong response here. That size is key. Later on, again, we asked the question, large versus small. And small really didn't register. Not many people were looking specifically for a small space. We thought it might be people with puppies or people really kind of train them, want a small space. But really, most people wanted a large space predominantly. And many times we heard the importance of having a large dog area and a small dog area. So it might be a small dog area, but a large area in general. So that's what we learned from that question. And then fencing. Is fencing a key reason I use the area? Again, this is something we really didn't know. We've heard that a lot of people like Section B because it is a fairly tightly fenced area as opposed to like Point Isabel or the Bulb. So there are dogs who maybe have a little trouble with recall or maybe a little distracted by cars or squirrels, but it really wasn't that strong of a response. I mean, clearly there is some preference, but might not be the key thing. So just kind of to summarize, if we're answering our question here, so what features might be most important? Well, clearly location is going to be important. We need something that's going to be convenient for people and where people feel safe. Area, again, they want a pretty big area, but they would also like a small dog park. And ground surface, it seems like they're going to be willing to trade open year-round for grass versus grass. So I would say of the ground surface, people mentioned ground surface, you could just write in. And I think we listed bark and grass and, just kind of natural plants. And then people wrote in paving and sand were two, but those were small response. I figure the sand, that's the folks at the beach, but pretty small response. So really grass was number one as far as preference. Okay, so now it's on to the third part of our question, location. So we're going to start, I know it's a little hard to read, sorry. Tried to get everything in one picture so you kind of get the lay of the land. These are the existing facilities. So we all know about Section B, right? That's up here in the corner. Not sure what, well, I'm going to assume we all know about that. I'm not sure we've all been there, but it's been described as a grassy part of the park. The lawn at Jules, the one thing I'd mentioned about Section B, it's already been mentioned before, but it has a fence. It's the only place where we have, specific rules for dogs. It's the closest thing Albany has to a dog park, even though it's really not a dog park. And then Jules Terrace Park down here, we might be familiar with that. It's a large grassy area. It's very popular with folks and their dogs. The Greenway Dartmouth, it's a nice big stretch of lawn under the BART tracks. Again, it's very popular with people running their dogs. And then, of course, we have the Albany Bulb, Neck, and Beach. Now, I have to apologize. We've decided we can't really talk about the beach. It's East Bay Regional Parks, and anything we did there would be a whole different process. So we're really just talking about the bulb now. So the graphic here includes the beach, and this part here, which is actually the East Bay Regional Park. The part we're talking about is the neck, right, this edge of the neck, and then the bulb here. That's really what we're looking at when we talk about the bulb. I think we can accept some clarifying questions if I'm not being clear. That's all right? You have a question? Yes.
I may be mistaken, but I was under the impression at one point I was told that the grassy area, the grassy field by school.
So
also at Albany.
I meant to say, I should have said, there are a number of additional places we know. These were just kind of what we felt were the most popular. I'm sure there are others. I know that some people take their pets to the hill. I do know that some people run on the lawn at the field, and that's fine. I mean, that's all fine. We're just trying to kind of get the general lay of the land as far as the more popular spaces. Okay, so now, over the last couple of years that we've been thinking about this, just some options have come to mind as possible locations for a new dog facility in Albany. And ideally, this would be an actual dog park, with a kind of a double gate and seating and water and stuff like that. So these are just some of the options that have kind of emerged over the last couple of years. I don't want to say that there's any guarantee that any of these would ever possibly work, right? These are just ideas we've had that we could ask for, we could try to push for, but depending on what basically what you folks have to say. So I'll start up here, a partial block of Key Route, the Key Route median near Washington. There's a stretch where there's some unhealthy trees. And so there's a good, decent size, it's about as little longer than Memorial Park, not quite as, Section B, not quite as wide. But it's a decent sized spot that could potentially work. Somewhere along the Greenway, I realized this morning that I put that at the block next to Solano, and there's no way there would ever be anything at the block of Solano. There's a lot there already. Really, we're thinking up here somewhere. There's a few blocks where there's a lot of open grassy spot that might work, a possibility. So this is on the map, but we've decided to kind of remove it from discussion. When we initially came up with this idea, so this is the spot that's highlighted there is directly behind the tennis courts, is what's currently the community garden, and there are plans to find a better location at the community garden. And if we move that, that would become available. And when we started talking about it, there was also the volleyball field here, which is a grassy area behind the picnic areas, for those who are familiar, and we would use the whole thing. But now that is in process of becoming a bocce ball court, so that wouldn't be available. So really, the biggest it could be would be the width of the tennis courts, and it's pretty small, so I don't think that's really a live consideration at this point. And then there's what I kind of consider the most interesting option, the open space near the train tracks under the freeway. It's a large space. We don't have a lot of large spaces in Albany that are open, and so this is, people were confused in the survey. They thought it was at Pierce Street Park. No, Pierce Street Park is up here. That's Pierce Street Park up here. This is on the other side of the train tracks, and we walked down there one day. It's actually an interesting area. It's relatively large, flat, a lot of space there. Good place to run around. So I think that's it for my, was that the last? Oh, right, so that's the introduction. Now we need to talk about what people said they liked. Yeah, clarified, yes, is it back on the map?
Where Albany High School is.
Okay.
Because
Albany High is here.
that's Albany High.
Yeah, so it's about half a block down.
It's not.
It's not direct. Yeah, no, again, it's a spot where I don't know if you've ever driven down it, but it caught my eye a few times. The trees were, as it happens, they've planted new trees there now, but they're real small, so it's a different story. But when we first noticed it, they were dying trees. That's the new ones, yeah. Oh, and I would just point out quickly, the boards where you're going to be invited to comment around are organized by location, and there's a little map next to each one if you need to help clarifying where they are. All right, so what did people have to say about these locations, these potential locations? As you can see, there is not an overwhelming favorite. We were hoping for something, but nothing really came to the top. Near the train tracks is pretty well, somewhere along the greenway is a marginal favorite, but really I have to call this a wash. I think that these are all, equally attractive or unattractive, however you want to interpret that. The way we figure this, just to clarify a little bit, is people could rank, I think there were 4 options. They had 3 choices, first, second, and third, and we counted, gave basically 3 points for the first choice, 2 points for the second choice, 1 point for the third choice, and then came up with the percentages.
Your survey is skewed because you included Ocean View Park.
It is, I know. Well, that was a late minute.
Skewed the survey.
Yeah. So
We also didn't include Section B.
we also didn't include Section B, which is also one that we should have included. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is enough.
Well, that's also why we're here. That's why we're coming to you now. And I believe that's it. Okay.
Just to clarify Section B, is Section B on the list as a place to change in some way, or is there a threat of it just being taken away as what it is? Are we adding to that, or are we saying, oh, we're going to swap that out for something?
Well,
Something else.
the plan now is not to make any changes. We're not planning to make any changes. It is considered one of the options for becoming a dog park, but we're not planning to make any changes.
So we could keep Section B as it is and potentially have
We're
another-
talking about an additional facility.
Okay. That's-
Hi, my name is Brian Martin, a commissioner. I'm going to talk about 2 locations that are two of the closest dog parks to us, to get a sense of what other places have. You may be familiar with Section B, or you may be familiar with some of the other parks in the area in Albany where people take their dogs. The one up here to the north is called Bruce King Memorial Dog Park in El Cerrito. Of course, the El Cerrito border is like 1 or 2 blocks from Memorial Park, and this is about 2.5 miles from Memorial Park. Down here's the Albany Dog Park. And this is right on the Greenway in El Cerrito. And then down here, this is on the Greenway on Hearst at MLK, where the Greenway goes east-west. And this is the farthest east part of that park. And let's take a quick look at those and just get a... Yes.
Bruce King, are you talking about the one that's lighted?
Yes.
Okay, that's only about 50 feet long.
I'm going to go over it and... Okay. So here's Bruce King, and so this is the lay of the land looking north. Here's a city street. And here's the pedestrian bicycle path. There's some apartment buildings there to the west and houses to the east. We're looking at the small dog area right there. And this is kind of like a lobby area for their double gate system. This is what they have as you enter here. And then if you turn left, you go to the little dog area. If you turn to the right, you go to the big dog area. And there's some basic information. It says the park is closed from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., which means the park is open at 7 a.m. And it's closed at 9 p.m. And that's every day of the week, 365 days out of the year. This is looking south from that area. They have a cute little, kind of like a carnival ride sign, but your dog needs to be, below this line to go in here. And so this is the small dog area. This is in the big dog area, looking south to the lobby and the little dog area. And then this is to the north, looking to the north in the big dog area. It's about 30-something feet wide. I measured that, and I didn't measure how long that is. It seemed long. It seemed big to me. It was longer than I was going to pace out. And then here's looking to the east. It's on a city street. There's houses right next to it. It's got about a hip-high fence around it, as opposed to Section B that's over my head. I don't know how high that is. This is looking sort of on the western fence, the apartment building's right next to it, and a sense of what that looks like. And then here's the eastern fence, and it's just a few feet over from the curb so people can open their doors. And so, this sort of shows how you can, if you have a little grassy strip, this is one way to turn a grassy strip into a dog park. We may or may not have exactly the same kind of space, but we have some spaces that have some similar aspects to that. And so these dog parks are open. They're wood chip, and they are open 365 days a year. This year, the city has, in the last year, the city for Section B has closed it 123 days. That's 3 months for the automatic closure during the winter because it's a grassy field, and then because of other random rain days outside of that, it was such a rainy season that there was an extra month basically. So Section B is on track for being open for about 242 days this year. And then they have their rules posted. And here's the Albany Dog Park in Berkeley. And so this is also wood chipped, open 365 days a year. Some examples of some of the amenities that they have and the space that they have. That was the large dog park. This is the small dog area. There's the double gating system. I'll show that a little bit more in a minute, and a few amenities there for little dogs. Here's a little bit more on the gate. They have the automatic locking gate, timed gate. Over here's their hours. Closes at 8 o'clock every day of the year. And it opens either at 8 or 9 in the morning, depending on weekdays, weekends, holidays. They have some city phone numbers handy and the rules. Here's the dual gate system they're using to keep dogs from escaping or having issues like that. And they have several of these signs set up around the park. Oh, and it's just a few inches away from a massive apartment building complex to the west. Sorry, to the north. And of course, it's on Hearst to the south, and so there's houses directly across it. And then this is to the north, where there's this apartment building right on the other side of the fence. And so they have these big signs up saying, keep your, no continuous barking, be on it, be good for their neighbors. And then there's, I don't know much about it, but they have a dog park association, and that has been given some space, and that has announcements, and they do various things, I think cleanup. I'm not really that sure exactly what they do, but that's one way that they've organized there at what I think is our closest dog park in Berkeley. It's about 2 miles south of Memorial Park. And so next, yeah, clarifying question?
I
Yeah.
Do like volunteer days, so they go and they clean the park, they have like potlucks the third Friday of every month, they have get-togethers with like families and dogs and stuff. I don't know, I went to one of them, they had a potluck, they invited me to sit down and have pizza, and apparently this is one of the first dog parks in the United States.
Yeah, there's a plaque that says that.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so to repeat, the association has potlucks and cleanup days and things like that. So I don't know exactly how they work that out with the city, but yeah. All right, and then, thank you for that. So next we have discussion stations. And so if you look around the room, for each location we've talked about, we have Memorial Park, pros and cons, and a markers. There's at least one marker for each butcher paper, so if you could keep that at the butcher paper. There's also some ink pens up here, ballpoint pens, if people want to use those, but there's at least one felt tip marker around for each piece of butcher paper. So we have Memorial Park pros, Memorial Park cons for a dog park location. This is all about Section B. And there's also the maps that Todd mentioned. For Memorial Park, there's also, if you would like to see Memorial Park Section B used for something else that's not a dog park. And so you can put down what you'd like to see there. For key route over here, and there's a map of, the part we're actually talking about, pro sheet, con sheet, for that being a dog park location. Next, we've got, thank you, my eyes are failing me, Albany Greenway, north of Washington, so pretty close to, relatively close to the middle school, kind of up there a little bit. And then, what's the next one say?
Open space near train tracks.
Open space near train tracks, okay, and so that's west of the train tracks, near the bulb. And then next up, we've got Terrace Park, pros and cons, Albany bulb. And Todd was clarifying that the city only has jurisdiction over the actual narrow neck and the bulb at the end of that, right?
The section of the neck, is there's the walkway, there's kind of the same.
Okay, the paved walkway, not the fire road. Okay, the fire road is county land or some regional park district land. We're going to get trained on this later.
Clearer on that map than the one I put out.
Okay, so look at the map if you're wondering what part of the bulb we're talking about. And then over there is Albany at Dartmouth, so that wide patch and long patch of grass down there. And then over here are amenities you'd like to see at any dog park, maybe Section B if it becomes an official dog park, or any dog park. And then questions you have, we have time at the end. As we have time at the end, we'll look at those. So the idea is to write down something appropriate for each piece of butcher paper, and we'll have a certain number of minutes for that. And then you'll each get a certain number of colored stickers, and you'll put a sticker next to each statement, pro or con, that resonates with you. You'll have a limited number of those to vote on. And then we'll have, was it a different color for questions? So we'll have a different color to vote for questions that resonate with you, and that will kind of prioritize the ones we address first if there's limited time.
Let me just jump in. One other thing, we meant to put up a paper that we're wide open to suggestions. If you have an idea for another location, great. We don't have a paper for it, but maybe you can add it to the questions or the amenities one over here.
Yeah.
And I just have a couple notes about a few of the spots for the Caltrans. The property that's near the freeway is actually Caltrans property, so it's not city property. And I know in your mind you think that is a crazy area, but it's going to be transformed because they're putting in a park and ride on the other side of the street, so that'll really change into more of a transportation kind of hub section. So the look of it will feel really different when that park and ride is completed. And then for the bulb and neck and bulb, the city still has this transition plan that they're still considering. So I can't say that any sort of dog amenities might happen in that space because it may not be city property at some point. So just keep that in mind, that that is still a pending, yeah.
This one is really asking about current usage.
Yes.
How it's used correctly.
I'm just throwing that out there for the,
Other clarifying questions? Yeah.
Couple questions, sorry. The space on Albany Greenway down at the bottom
By Dartmouth?
Dartmouth, have the neighbors been surveyed about the possibility of putting a dog park in there? Because one of the concerns is we'd have the same problem down there because of the proximity to neighbors as we have in Memorial Park. So we're going to start the whole process all over again with neighbors complaining about noise and parking and everything else. So before you propose that, have you surveyed the neighbors as to what their response is going to be?
We surveyed neighbors of an existing high-use dog facility area, the Section B, and these are things that, this is sort of one of the initial opportunities for input, pros and cons on these different locations. If a location is put forward that the commission wants to move forward with, based on input we've gotten and things like today and other things, then definitely due noticing would occur on whatever location that is.
There's actually, these papers are different. Some of them are asking about potential uses of dog park. Some of them are just asking for feedback about the way it's currently used. The Dartmouth, Albany at Dartmouth is just feedback on the way it's currently used. You can see the title says existing uses. Some of them say potential dog park. I know it's level, I apologize. We didn't quite know how to divide this up. But we're not proposing Dartmouth as a potential dog park location. We're just asking for feedback on the way it's used.
Yeah, we appreciate your comment about it having to go through a whole public process, and that's kind of what we try to convey, that like we want to not exclude any option here, and anything that we recommend is going to have to go through a full vetting. So this is not the end process of even the city council recommendation. Is not going to be, oh, stamp, this is the location. This is really just thought of as an exploratory process. Does that make sense?
That's fine. Another question for Shelley. At one point, we talked about the space between University Village and Sprouts. That was that ruled out as any possibility because the university didn't want to participate in having that?
thanks for asking. It to me seems like a beautiful spot.
This is between University Village and Sprouts.
Yes, in that back parking lot area, there is a space. They are actively working on a number of like residential builds, and so we haven't pursued that any further. It is not a city-owned property, so that would take quite a coordination. But I will say that the University Village residents there are very supportive of having a dog park. There are, what was my number? Like over 200 dogs, I think, that live in University Village. Yeah, so they are excited if there is a dog park that would go near where they are as well. They have looked at putting a dog park on their property, but did not have funding for that to complete it. There were a couple options inside their property. So at this point, it's not necessarily on the table, but I'm not saying that it's a no.
And then I would also, to get to the earlier question, mention for, if there's a dog park going in here or there, maybe the neighbors will be, the assumption that the neighbors will be upset that the dog park is going in. We've seen from the Section B surveys that people said one of the things they valued the most was having a dog park near them. And we've also seen in the two, what I think are the two closest dog parks to us in El Cerrito and Berkeley, dog parks that are equally as close to residents as any of the spaces that are proposed here. If you want, and maybe the city decides, people decide we want something far away from anyone, in which case, the freeway might be what people want. But I wouldn't necessarily assume that putting a dog park near residents is something that people would be upset about. Yeah.
At the risk of not being tactful, the reason we're here is because of issues of the community around Section B. And I won't say anything more.
Okay, so if there aren't any more questions, then I think, oh, yes.
Just a quick clarification, is the assumption that a dog park, something that's designated as a dog park, will be fenced? Because Albany doesn't have a leash law, so in effect, anywhere can be a dog park if it's not fenced.
Right.
We're talking about a dedicated space.
Yeah,
Fenced?
yeah, basically, yeah, fenced area.
I think that's where the amenities, so please do put you can put fenced on amenities, you can put year-round open, you can put bark. I think that's one of those questions that we have.
And then we've also seen high fence in Section B and hip high fence in El Cerrito, and I think it's about chest high fence in Berkeley or something, if that's...
We really are here to hear from you what you're looking for.
So, and I would just like to say, we want to give everybody a chance to comment, so why don't we, if we're going to be around, you can ask any of us person to person if, and then we can share back with the group if we think it's something that everybody else can hear. So I think we should move to the section where we do...
So grab a marker at each place or a pen and...
How much time are we allowed?
We're 45, we're going to aim for about 40 minutes. So we'll kind of stop the clock at 7:25, right? 8:25.
Dad, you were awesome. It was great. Love you.
Did you finish your movie?
Hey, do you know any good features like a picture photo editing software that you can like change the person's like face?
for pro-con comments, and the green is for questions.
So blue is to support the statement.
To support the statement. It could be supporting a con statement. It could be supporting a pro statement. Also for amenities.
Like people are putting check marks, it's basically check marks.
No, actually, based on.
You get 8.
Green is, if you
8
wanna-
stickers.
Green is for questions. So if you want to, green is only for questions. Over here, if you want to vote for your favorite question. And we'll prioritize the most voted questions to answer first.
Oh, shit.
Lanyard there. Are you at UC Village or?
So to kind of oppose, I agree with this, I like this emphasis. And then this is for questions, so it can be the same thing for questions. So the questions I want to answer.
So I can take the hand.
You can take those. We're trying to give everybody one of them. So it's curious if the village. You should, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, you go to the.
Yes, they would vote. I agree with this. Whether it's positive or negative. And frankly, if there's one there that you want to say no to, it's not just right. Choose stickers. You'll get your set. Yeah. Oh, good, yeah. This one's. But.
Well, I wrote on to me because it's not fenced. So if you agree with that, make it a fence, you don't like it because it's not fenced, then put a.
How do you find the path along the Bay Trail? How do you find that too?
Wait, does that mean you like it or you don't? I got one of my dogs, so I didn't. It's not an option. Oh,
One of the commissioners.
Yes.
We're on the subcommittee for dog parks.
Thank you.
Maybe we should hand these out.
Yeah, if you have ideas for other locations that we're not talking about, those suggestions ones from the last bunch of paper or one of these two. For questions.
But I asked that question when they said,
That's great.
well, I want to believe it's.
But it's empty, where we do it, it's empty, so they just fence off the side in the area. Right, who put the green light? Did you? That's a negative.
Oh, I know that was the question.
That means you don't.
There's still hope, there's time.
Make yourselves where you're going. Do you want anything? Give me a blue one. Oh, you don't like
Green, so green is.
Yeah, way out of the way.
So if you get emails, anyway, you can check the website, you can see this.
Noisy.
Yes.
And it's slow, not bad. And it looks like a turn.
Yeah, it doesn't have any changes, they have no down.
Oh, it's sloping.
It's sloping at first, and then it slopes and goes back up.
I think those are some of the people who also want to change the.
It's 2 blocks from my house.
So it's convenient to the.
Yes, but you're right. I do love, the reason I go to First Key is because I love the tree.
All right, well, thanks for coming.
This is sold.
It's a great thing.
I didn't know whether there's one, but.
This got really in first.
Eileen.
Yeah.
All right, see you around.
You do a dog park also, will you use this to close B? Oh, okay.
Seeing water.
The off-leash for.
You can put me down for fence,
Sorry.
fencing, water.
Year round?
I can.
Year round,
I'd
okay.
rather have seating.
Seating, okay.
I'd rather have,
Double gate?
no.
I can write year round.
The other question, even offered to me for.
No garden. Trees, shade, show you the back.
Just make sure you focus.
Fencing higher than
Okay, if we could have a seat, we'll take a look at the questions that people had on the question sheet, and we'll start wrapping things up.
Like, you're there in the afternoon when it's a very peaceful and in general, super conscientious, self-policing. So, it's the, but like, ours is just getting on my word. Right. And we're going to see what I'm very tall. I'm very happy aside from what I've missed, it's generally no 20, no, like 40, it's like, I see the dog, I like the way section E is presented. I'm just opposed to additional amenities. They should get more desirable and therefore attractive to the dogs. That's my issue. I'm not opposed to it. I just, but it's I mean, I think Albany deserves a dog park because of water and year-round service. No, it's all those things, but we can't be stuck. That's my position. So yes, I think it is. Albany, there's room for us for another dog. Well, if you're looking at, well, they don't exist, but they can be created. Well, the Greenway. But isn't the Greenway yeah. That's what else the reason is. No, the median, like on key route, that's underutilized. That's why.
Pretty much so.
So my position is that, no, there's already a certain amount of hours that I still do, because people are religious it doesn't know what to do. You know, yeah. So that's an issue.
I don't know.
Let's see. Okay, thanks everybody for coming back, and I think we're definitely going to have enough time to address all these questions. I'll wait a second because one of the questions I want Shelley to answer. We can still answer that question. I'll bring that question up. Okay. So one of the first questions that we got was why wasn't a fence space for dogs put at Pierce Street Park? It's always empty, and I'm going to ask Shelley to answer that one.
Thanks. Looking through the historical information on the planning of Pierce Street Park, it went through a long process, community input, and it was not identified as a spot to have a dog park. They wanted, the main consensus was to make it a multi-use playfield. It is closed off right now because they did a seeding when we redid the park and it didn't take. We're doing a turf analysis to determine if we actually put grass out there, if it will grow, or if we should look towards putting in some sort of turf, artificial turf in that space. So that analysis should be completed in the next couple of months.
Okay, thanks. Next question is, who do we make ourselves heard regarding the dog access to the Bulb and Beach and Plateau? Is that right? Have I said that right? Shelley.
These go way back. Dog things go way back. I could look back. I was saying all of these things have come up at some other time in the past 20 years. We hosted a big meeting about dogs with the East Bay Regional Park District because they handle that section, and the transition plan is on the city's website, so you can read how if the city transitions the city's portion to the East Bay Regional Park District, how they would handle dogs in the area, which is basically there's a leash law for them. They have a hard time enforcing the leash law on the beach and potentially on the bulb and the neck of the bulb due to a lack of resources. They don't have rangers out there every day. So I don't know if there'll be any more community input and process in that because they're at a point where they have a transition plan and it's just in council's hands right now. It's kind of in a holding pattern. I can't give you all the details in terms of what they're discussing necessarily.
Thanks.
One thing we can also say is, as of a few months ago, the Parks and Rec Commission is now the Parks, Rec, and Open Space Commission, and under our purview is now at least the city's portion of the waterfront and creeks, and so more things will be coming up having to do with that at our meetings, at our regular second Thursday of the month meetings, and so you can be looking on our agendas to see if something's coming up about the waterfront, and we'll also be being educated as commissioners. We'll be educated by staff as to what the different jurisdictions are out there and who's involved with what, and that will hopefully help the public to know whom to contact to get this or that to happen.
Thanks. Okay, so the next question is, if you do a dog park elsewhere, will you use this to close Section B? Please don't. And Todd, you're going to answer that one.
So yeah, I know that this is the concern, and we saw several survey results, people saying, we know you're just buttering us up so you can close Section B, and really that is not our intention. We did not come into this planning to close Section B. At this point, the survey results don't suggest it's needed. So I can't stand here and promise you that that something might not change at Section B, but that is not our intention or our plan at this point.
And then I would add that Section B isn't officially an official dog park at this point. It's kind of in limbo. And so an option would be to also potentially make it an official dog park and then potentially with amenities and things like that. That's one of the possibilities. It's not a guaranteed thing.
Okay, next question is, do we need a dog park in Albany with so many space constraints? So I think so that's a question of, do we need a dog park at all? And one of the reasons we're taking on this analysis to answer some of those questions. So we're going to take the results of this workshop and then the general public survey results and then bring that forward to the commission meeting. So we just say we can't make that kind of determination or answer that question right now.
The other thing I would say, and this thought comes to me oftentimes when we talk about dog parks aren't really for the dogs, they're for the people who have the dogs. And so it's really for the residents of Albany and the people using the parks as much or more than for the dogs. So there is a reason to have facilities in the city that meet the needs of the residents.
And the other question is, can the off-leash rule in Albany be changed? And I was going to ask Shelley to please answer that one.
It is an ordinance in the city's municipal code that those do change. So we would have to go through a process through Parks and Rec, and Parks and Rec could make a recommendation. And that could come out of the analysis as well, is that we do need a dog park, but maybe some adjustments to the leash law would make people feel more comfortable in parks. But I think we're getting some data from non-dog owners or people that could play into that. So it could be something the Parks and Rec Commission could take on as a result of this.
Okay, and then the next question was Gill Tract, please. I think this was a suggestion for an additional dog park, potential dog park location. Albany residents on west side of San Pablo need a park. Brian, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I would say the Gill Tract is UC property, and as is the area between Sprouts and the UC Village that came up, and so that is stuff that's not directly controllable by the city. We're mostly looking at things that the city council could vote to approve, and then it happens. Of course, under the freeway, that's also Caltrans property. You have to go through Caltrans to get approval, but there's a whole process for that. So the Gill Tract is also something that was highly contentious as to how it was used a while ago, and it's not city property, so it's not directly under our purview and would require meetings with the city and UC to try to hammer anything out and figure out what UC's plans are. I believe they're looking at more developments in some of the areas that we identify as open space right now.
There's another location question. Shelley, is the Albany Hill location question, was that resolved? I think, did anybody else have a question about Albany Hill besides the person who, somebody, no?
And then I would also add, I also live on the west side, and I agree there's not a whole lot of place. There's the Albany Bulb, but there's not a lot of like city parks that are conducive to that. So having more spaces on the west part of town would be nice.
And the last question, is, what are the alternatives to grass? Brian.
Well, we saw in the pictures of El Cerrito and Berkeley that there's the wood chips allow for a year-round facility, and so that's one. I know of one in North Oakland, the Temescal area, under Freeway Highway 24 there, by I think it's Frog Park. There's it's all asphalt, I believe. I took my dog there not too long ago. Does anybody else know of other facilities? What different surface they use?
No, it's just wood chips are a nightmare for my dogs. They ones that run fast and they're done, they cut the heck out of their paws. And then for like golden retrievers, they ingest it and they cut their paws. So wood chips are just a nightmare for most dogs. Some dogs.
Okay, and I would also say that there's dog parks that are open every day of the year with lots of dogs there, and they have wood chips, and it works for some people, but that's good feedback.
I think, so we're kind of at the end of our questions. Did you want to say
I'm trying to remember, the survey did ask if people could write in surfaces, and really, other than grass, wood chips, and just kind of natural area, call it weeds if you want, it was sand and paved were the kind of the two suggestions. I don't really know what else. Yeah, the key is something that's going to be durable and allow you to use it year round, but also, yeah.
Was it because artificial turf was deemed too expensive that it wasn't?
I mean, that hasn't come up.
I'm surprised nobody mentioned it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that when they're using artificial turf for a sports facility, dogs aren't allowed because it's unsanitary, because it doesn't drain the way that a natural field does. So there's some obvious issues there. Maybe they have some sort of product for pets. For dog use. I don't know.
There's one in San Francisco. Yeah.
That uses it?
Yeah.
Because I just know from knowing some of the boarding facilities in our area that have the artificial turf and talking to them, the biggest issue is even they hose every single day, it still smells like urine. You just can't get rid of it, and the drainage is a real issue. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And they all have those little plastic or rubber beads that hold the the leaves up or little, and that's not good for the dogs either. So.
Okay, fair enough.
So I can just, maybe, since we have more time, I don't know if we want to
Should probably close.
offer more. Well, why don't we close with the timeline, and then we can stick around if anybody has any more questions for a few more minutes.
We need to get the chairs back the way they were.
Yep. We have a little. So again, the next meeting, June 13th, is that right, is when we're going to be presenting the results of all of the work the subcommittee has done to the commission. So you're invited to attend that and make public comment there. I think the July meeting would not happen before the end of, I'm just thinking in terms of timing. I hate to overcommit because I'm not sure if we'll have a consensus or, have everything we need by that meeting, that June meeting, to bring it to council. So if we need 2 sessions to talk about this, then potentially we bring it to the July meeting to finalize. And then hopefully the city council meets twice a month. So maybe the next city council meeting after that. Todd, do you agree? Does that make sense?
It's dark in August, right?
Is there
Right, so we're going to do our best, but if we
Up against
find that
that,
we
yeah.
can't get it done, the timing for council meetings, our July meeting is July, I think, 11th, and the second council meeting is July 15th, so I don't know that will work, so it could get pushed out.
Yeah. Sure.
All the schools, Thursday night is the night before the last day of school. We got so many graduations on Thursday night and Friday and the last day of school that you may get less people than you want on that June 13th meeting.
On the June 13th meeting. Okay, that's a good point.
Let people know they are more than welcome. All the materials are available online ahead of time. An email, we all look at the emails. They do. They're just like you standing up there speaking. So feel free. They can be heard that way.
We have a new system on our Parks and Rec page, commission page. It says to email commissioners, and that is a group email that goes to every commissioner and the staff liaison. So no longer do you just have to email me and I pass it out. That will be automatically sent out. So anytime you have comments, you can add that. And please go to the city's website and to the e-notification section on there. And there are categories that you can check for areas you're interested in receiving something right in your inbox. So the Parks and Rec, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission is one, so you'll get the agendas. And then there's Dogs in Albany, I think, is the other one.
Okay.
And my daughter's graduating from Albany Middle School, and so I happen to have the dates in the times in my calendar. They said it's 5 to 6:30 on that Thursday, so it should be over, although people may want family time afterwards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.